Hello and welcome to the next 100 Days podcast. My name is Graham Arrowsmith.
And my name's Kevin Appleby. So, Graham, talking to somebody who I've already interviewed on the Grow CFO show, and there we were talking about helping CFOs recruit members of their finance team, put a recruitment pipeline together. But Ryan's main business is to help entrepreneurs recruit people into their business.
Yeah, we've just been discussing how Ryan pronounces his surname. So it's Ryan, that's the easy bit. But then it's a bit like saying England, but without the D. So I'm going to have a go at this. It's going to be called Englin, right?
Perfect. That was exactly it.
Wow, how about that? Yeah, I suppose I've been living over 60 years on this planet. I'm sure I can get my head around dropping the D off a word. But it's really lovely to meet you. You're from Tennessee.
I just moved to Tennessee.
So you're not from Tennessee. So whereabouts are you from then?
Arizona, born and raised.
Oh, right. Okay. All right. So that isn't that the state that sort of produces an awful lot of ballots that are falsely made, sort of in the little print shop somewhere in Maricopa.
I think a lot of states fall under that bucket right now. So, but Arizona is known for its dry heat, and I think they've had 55 days over 110 this year so far.
Oh, wow. That's hot.
That's a very good reason not to live there.
It's a great reason not to live there.
Tennessee is a lovely place as well. I mean, yeah, and presumably you kind of like music. Then is that part of it?
I love music and I love the outdoors.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. I mean, I have to say, we love the Americans. We really do. I mean, you're easy prey, generally speaking, but do fight back. Fight back against Kevin, because nobody ever fights back against you, Kevin, do they? No, seriously. Your business is called Core Matters, all one word, corematters.com. And just in a nutshell, what do you do?
We help entrepreneurs. We help teams that are struggling to attract and hire great people, put a process in place so they don't have to worry about hiring anymore.
So if Kevin wanted to hire somebody, a singleton, you wouldn't get involved because it wouldn't be enough of a job.
I mean, our tools will work, but we implement an entire process. So if Kevin's like, I just need to fill this one position, he might not want to consider the whole process. Might take bits and pieces, maybe a tool or two, and use it.
So the typical employee count for your clients is?
I don't know, north of 10. I usually say it's not as much big as the company is, but how many people are you hiring? If you're hiring more than 5 people, 10 people a year, this process is going to be great for you. It's going to save you a ton of time. If you got problems with retention or turnover, this process is going to be a game changer for you.
So, okay, so it's a process. You have this process which you basically provide to people. Yeah. How did you get the sort of, thought? How did you come across this process?
Yeah, so I spent a decade in corporate building teams and seeing teams get restructured and all of that. And when I went into entrepreneurship, I started a marketing company and I worked with home service contractors. And I don't know if you know, but the trades, nobody wants to go into the trades anymore. And so it's a real challenge to find plumbers and electricians and construction workers. Well, that was my target market for my marketing company. And all of them were struggling to take on the leads that we were generating for them because they didn't have enough people. So I went to a couple of them. I don't know if this was brilliance or insanity, but I said, hey, let me help you solve the people problem. And what I realized real quickly was that recruiting is not an HR activity. Recruiting is a marketing activity. So I was able to take all of my marketing tools and processes, combine that with my background in interviewing and structuring teams, created the CoreFit hiring system.
Well, that sounds really easy. I mean, I think Kevin could have done that. I mean,
sure.
You, Kevin. I mean, crikey.
Finance person, not a marketing person. This is your area, Greg.
I know a little bit about marketing and recruiting. I've got it right and I've got it wrong. But basically, one of those things. It's one of the, plus probably like you, Kevin, did quite a bit in corporate as well, which it was always the red-haired ones. I mean, you can't say that anymore, but they were the trouble. Not only trouble, but they were usually extraordinarily bright. And they would. I was trained as what they call an operational assessor I worked for Royal Mail, and you had to sort of drive people to the sort of level of their intellect, sort of thing. And these often redhead people would really test you. They would be awesome. But I don't know. I mean, I don't think hair color has anything to do with it, but I don't know. Maybe that's one of the little tick boxes. What color hair do you have?
Yeah, we usually stay away from those kinds of stereotypes, but I get it. We do a lot of behavioral assessments, and it might be that redheads all fall into a certain behavioral bucket. So maybe that's what it is.
Well, it's a piece of work that somebody somewhere will be doing,
of course,
and they'll be sponsored right royally by somebody. Kevin,
if this is a marketing process rather than an HR process, Ryan, tell us some more about how does that work? I mean, I'm thinking of marketing as you're generating leads, you're warming people up, and at some point you're converting into a sale.
Yeah.
Now, when you want to recruit somebody, the vacancy's there and then. So how does that fit together?
Well, and that's part of the reason that we built a process around this, is so that you're constantly building what we call a bunch of people that are raising their hand saying, hey, I want to join your team. I want to be a part of what you're doing. Oh, you're not ready yet? I'll wait. See, the thing is, the reason most people are struggling to hire people right now is because they haven't realized why people switch jobs. They know this to be true, but they've done nothing about it. You've heard that people don't leave jobs. They leave people. They leave bosses and managers and leadership teams and toxic cultures. That's what they're leaving to go work somewhere else. They're not looking for a different set of responsibilities. They're looking for a new team to work for. And when we know this, and we know it to be true, everybody says it, but we don't actually act that way. So imagine that instead of saying we have this job and here's all the things that you already know we're going to ask you to do, instead of your ad being that, what if your ad was, hey, we know that you just left the last Yahoo you were working for because of these reasons, right? We know why people leave their bosses. Imagine if you came and worked for a company that had these things to offer you. And that is where the marketing comes in. It's getting the right message in front of the right people.
Okay, so you were solving a real pain. You mentioned this earlier, that you basically stepped in, like you said, maybe it was a bit crazy. It probably wasn't. It was probably entirely uncrazy, that in the sense that you went to people and to solve a problem, which is one of the things we do in marketing, isn't it? So basically, what was it like, that problem? Can you sort of describe that typical problem with these people that ended up being your clients?
Yeah, so most of them were in home services at the time. And so the one story that I remember vividly was an HVAC plumbing contractor. And it was July in Phoenix, Arizona. So, it's 110 degrees. And these people would call and say, my AC's not working. And this one particular client of ours would say, great, we'll be out there in 3 weeks. Yeah. That's where you're going to fit on our schedule. 3 weeks, you're going to wait for us. And people were like, you're crazy. I'm going to call the next one. I'm going to call the next one. I'm going to call the next one. So we went to him and we said, hey, what's really the problem? He said, we have 4 empty trucks sitting in the back lot. And if we could just fill those, we could take on all the leads. And so I said, well, why would anyone want to come work for you? Well, we pay well, and they get to do this, and they get new trucks, and they get this. I'm like, you and everybody else says the exact same things. Why do they kind of want to come work for you? So we started to understand what their culture was like. We started to understand what their leadership was like, the way they communicated. And that's what we promoted in the ads. When we posted the job, that's what we promoted. And for the people that are looking for the job seekers, they see this and they go, this is different. This isn't like everybody else. I know what it's like to work for everybody else. I've done it. This is something different. And that's what really drew people in. And then, of course, I find out that once we draw them in, they don't know how to interview. They don't know how to onboard. They don't know how to engage them. They don't know how to hold them accountable. So that's why we built this whole process, so that all that work we put into getting people there, we actually have a system that will help keep them.
Yeah, I mean, that you, in other words, you wouldn't allow them to squander it. It was one of the saddest parts of all of this. You do, in a marketing context, that you do an awful lot of work getting everything all on green lights, and then you get this dirty big red light is when the client steps in and does what they've always done. It's really has to be coached out of them, if you like. So what you do is intervene at that point and then say, actually, you do all the things that they perhaps don't have the time or skill to do.
And that's what a lot of it is that no one ever taught them how to do this stuff.
No.
Like they know how to be an entrepreneur, or they know how to provide their product or service, but no one ever taught them how to build successful teams. No one ever taught them how to use the tools to recruit. No one ever taught them interviewing, which, by the way, Kevin, to answer your question, interviewing is the sales process. Like that's what that is. It's the marketing is the recruiting side. The interview is the sales process. And then onboarding is fulfillment. And if we just, and so we use those terms because that's what people are familiar with. And like, but we're going to change the messaging. We're going to change the way we communicate. We're going to change the frequency. We're going to change these things. But you get to align with some of the processes that you're already doing.
Interview as a sales process is an interesting one, Ryan. Who's the seller and who's the buyer?
That's the rub, right?
Yeah.
So I think
you could argue that the company is trying to sell the job.
Yeah.
You could argue that the person is trying to sell themselves because they're the one that's taking the money at the end of the day. But they're both parties are trying to sell in there.
Yeah. So, well, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but when you read my book, you'll find that the employer is the buyer.
Yeah.
They need to be in the buying position. One of the biggest mistakes that I see employers make is the job seeker comes in and the candidate's there and they're sitting there and they're talking to them. They're so excited because someone showed up and they just gush about how awesome the company is and all the things this company is going to do. And they make all these promises that they know they can't keep. And then they start asking the candidate questions and the candidate nails the interview because you just spent 20 minutes giving them the answers to the test. You just gushed about yourself. And so when you ask a question, how do you see yourself growing with the company? They're like, well, let me tell you, your growth goals are this. And so I'm going to just tell you that because that's what you want to hear. And so a lot of our coaching when it comes to the interview process is that the interviewer, the employer, has to stay in the mindset of the buyer. You are here to buy. You are not here to sell. Your marketing got them excited enough to come in and talk to you. You've got to let them sell themselves. And here's the reality. Most candidates don't know how to do this well. So you don't want to discount everybody and say, well, you didn't do a good job selling me. So you need a process to guide the candidate through to help them sell themselves because they just don't know how to do it.
So you get somebody into the room, they basically should probably have a reasonable idea of what the business that they're sat in it does and wants to do. They should have done some research. I'm always really quite disappointed when people don't appear to have done anything other than turn up. And, so basically what you're saying is that the buyer must buy in the way in which would they buy anything else for their business, that they would, they wouldn't give the house away before they actually bought. They would want to buy effectively. So the kinds of questions that they perhaps would lead with, the typical sort of interview questions is tell me about yourself. I mean, there's probably a top 3 interview questions list. My guess is that's on it. But what do you advise the buyer to question the interviewee?
So we focus more on culture fit and behavior than we focus on skills. Okay. I can teach somebody how to do the job. I can teach them to use software. I can teach them to read a script. I can teach people to use the tools. What I can't do is teach the behaviors, and I can't teach the culture fit. So instead of us thinking in the way of questions, I want you to think of how can we get those behaviors to show up? That's what I want us to focus on. So for example, I'll give you one. We do a lot in the trades, like I told you. And if you've ever met a construction craft worker or a laborer, they're not of many words. So getting them to have rehearsed anything or done any research is good luck. Yeah. But one of the things that we do, especially on the front line, is we want to see people in their natural environment. So here's a real easy one. We see people all the time hiring customer service reps, right? Yeah. The people that are going to take care of your customer, they're going to answer the phone when they're upset and they're going to make them feel good. And what do? We bring them in for the interview. We sit them on the other side of the desk and we have a face-to-face conversation with them for 45 minutes. And it's amazing. And we're like, this is the person I've been looking for. We hire them, we put them on the phones, and it's a disaster because we didn't interview them in their natural environment. They're great at face-to-face. They're great when they can read body language, but you put them on the phone and they don't know how to connect with the customer. So instead, invite them into your office, meet them face to face, walk out of the room, and on your way out, say, by the way, that phone's going to ring in 15 seconds. It's going to be me on the other line. We're going to do this interview over the phone. Now you get to see them in their natural environment. And then if it goes well, now you get to introduce them to the team. You get to have some face-to-face conversation. But now you get to see what it's really like for that person in the role that they're going to be in. So instead of questions, think about how do we get them in their natural environment and test their behavior and whether or not they're going to fit our culture.
It's interesting.
So if you're interviewing an electrician, would you ask him across to change a light switch?
We might. So we have one client that has them draw a 4-way switch. There's blank pieces of paper and pencils on the table when they walk in, and they say, I want you to draw how you'd wire up a 4-way switch. We have other clients that actually have a shop that they'll walk them out into the shop where they use to train people, and they'll say, hey, that machine's broken. Go figure it out. And they'll want to see how they work. And what they're paying attention more to is not, can they fix the machine? How do they think? Do they take care of the tools? Do they have an attitude about them? Are they cursing when things aren't working well? Because the customer is going to see that. Do they clean up at the end, or do they just leave it?
Interesting.
And that's what we're looking for, is those things we can't teach. I can teach them how to replace a run cap, right? I can teach them how to do those things that they may not know how to do or troubleshoot, but I can't teach them how to think. I can't teach them how to clean up, and I can't teach them how to fit our culture.
One of the things you say on your site, well, somewhere on your site, I can't see it exactly here, but is that you're all about hiring better people, and then you add something at the end, fast or quickly or whatever. But basically, effectively, that's your USP. Better people.
So what we see is there's this interview process called the fog the mirror test. And heck, in recent days, if they just show up for the interview, they're hired, right? They don't even ask them questions anymore. They're like, you're here. You can get to the job site. You're good. And so what people are doing is they're hiring people that don't align with who they are as an organization. So these people aren't bad. They're just bad for you. And so when we talk about hiring better people, we talk about people that align with your company culture, align with your vision, are excited to take care of your customers, think like you do. That's how we define better. And again, it doesn't mean that the people that you're hiring are bad people. They're just going to be better for someone else.
Yeah. And the speed and the velocity is all down to a well honed process.
One of the things that we look at is the employee experience, or the candidate experience in this case. Put yourself in the shoes of the job seeker. It's been proven, studies have shown that looking for a job is one of life's most stressful events.
Yeah.
They're walking away from a known income source, going out into the unknown. Who knows who they're going to be working for, putting their family's livelihood at risk to come work for you. Yeah. And what do we do as employers? We make it really challenging for them to get the job. We don't think, wow, this is a stressful time for them. Maybe there's a way we can make this easier for them. Maybe there's a way we can remove some of the stress, because when we remove the stress, we'll get to meet the real person.
Do you know, one of the ways I figured a different way of actually hiring people some time ago, and I live quite close to the hills around where I live, and we go for a walk, probably half an hour, 45 minutes, something like that. But basically, you come back and cracky, you knew their life story.
Yeah.
But it was less because you're walking sort of together. You're not like face to face. You're walking together, and every now and again you'll turn and have a look. But basically, you're walking with a purpose. And I found that extraordinarily helpful to understand the person. Whether or not I repeated the same questions and all the rest of it, I don't think it was. It was very much about the person. And yeah, there might have been so give us an idea of your background, etc. So there might have been those sorts of questions just to get people going.
Yeah.
But the act of walking out somewhere, it's not quite the idea of sticking them to say, here's a piece of paper, a 4-way switch sort of idea. But it's the same, moving them out of a situation which could be really stressful for them.
Absolutely.
Because frankly, stressful for me as well. So at the end of the day, it's a lot easier to get to know people.
Nobody likes interviewing except for me. I like interviewing, but nobody likes it. And it's stressful. And what do we do as employers? We think, how can we make them run the gauntlet? How can we make sure that this is really the right person? We're going to put them through all of these things and stress them out and then see what really shows up. And I love the idea. Take them out, going for a walk and just getting to know the person. Yeah. The reality is when you hire somebody, you get the whole package.
You do.
You don't just get the electrician.
No, you don't.
You get the spouse, you get the dad that's having problems with his kids, you've got the money problems, all of that stuff you get when you hire somebody. Yeah. So the more that you can connect with them and get to know them and let them know that you care, the better off you'll be.
The kind of frustrating thing for me was that, the retaining that knowledge as well. I came back probably, with a, often if we're watching something on the TV, I think it's probably an age thing. My wife has to do a quick, Cliff Notes summary for me, because what the hell's going on this show? I don't really know. I don't understand it. Oh, it's this, and that. Oh, right. Okay, then. But coming back from the war, you'd probably get the sense of it. And that's all you really want, I guess. Culturally, do they fit with you? Do they have they got the same goals and all the rest of that? Without going into the sort of gushing stuff. So I found that quite helpful, and I'll probably repeat that in some way or other going forward. Kevin?
Yeah. So Ryan, just winding back a little bit to the setting up the process in the first place, setting up the marketing piece of this.
Yeah.
You're sitting there and saying to the prospective employer, well, okay, this, and this, that's the same as everybody else. What makes you different? And we talked about that. People leave because of people, because of teams, because of toxic cultures and so on. Well, those organizations that those people have left need to recruit people too, to replace them. Do you get into the situation where you've had that conversation about what makes you different? You start thinking, well, actually, before we do anything here, we've got to do some culture change.
Yeah, I think that especially with the smaller companies that we work, less about culture change and more just about intentionality around the culture. Everybody's got a culture. And just because I don't agree with the culture doesn't mean that it's bad. We had a client years ago, one of our first clients that we did this work with, and they were having struggle keeping their sales team. They were just turning salespeople. Numbers were down. They weren't doing well. And I dug in and I met the leadership team and we started talking about their culture. And one of the things that they had done unintentionally was created this culture of passive aggressiveness. Now, I'm not a fan of people being passive aggressive, but when you got 5 guys that went to high school together, all started a company together, guess what? It was like a fraternity. Like that was just normal for them. So we actually said, why don't you guys just own this? So we started creating marketing materials about the fact that it was like a fraternity and there was this razzing each other and being passive aggressive and beating around the bush. And like that was normal for them. And they started attracting people that were attracted to that. Numbers went up, retention went up. It was crazy. They just owned the fact that they had this dysfunctional culture. Yeah. But it worked for certain people. So when I say it, for me, that's not good. I wouldn't want that.
No.
But it worked for them. And there were people out there that thrived in that. They wanted to play the games and do, but that's what their people wanted. And the company thrived because they just owned who they were. Because it's a lot easier for you to just own it and become intentional about it than it is to shift that.
Why are staffing agencies and recruiters not as good as what you do?
Because they don't dig into the culture side of it. They're looking to fill an open rec. That's all they want to do. They're taking a warm body and putting it into an open position. And they're not sitting here and saying, what does better really mean? I mentioned this on the podcast that we did. It was, if you're struggling to attract good people, and notice I use the word attract, that's a marketing mechanism, attraction. You want to attract good people. You want them coming to you and raising their hand. If you're not attracting good people, it's probably because your brand and your messaging is not attractive to good people.
Yeah.
Okay, so they don't attract good people. They attract people, though, don't they? They just, some of these
not the right ones.
And they have this menu of jobs, and there is some sort of matching process. I'm sure they'll have some sort of process, but I kind of sympathize with the recruiter. And so many people, nowadays, I mean, you hear them, it's almost a mark of, I don't know, they say, I've been headhunted.
Mm,
Like, you're like, that's something special.
yeah.
It might have been about 50 years ago, but I mean, I don't know about now. But,
No, it's still a way that I see a lot of professional jobs happen. You know,
Yeah.
at finance leader level, somebody's quite happily sitting there at finance leader level in their company. They weren't particularly looking for a job. Headhunters got a brief from another company, does his LinkedIn search. Suddenly you've got a phone call sounding you out about this vacancy somewhere else. And a lot of people move for as a result of those calls. They weren't necessarily out there in the job market, but the call comes in and it's the right move for them, and it happens.
but that's not what you do, though, is it?
It is not. So there are three ways that you can build teams, build effective teams, recruit people. Hunting is one of them. It's headhunting, right? Like we go put a bullseye on someone's head and we say, we're going to go get that person, or we got to fill this open rack. And we teach that to our clients. We teach a LinkedIn strategy, but instead of doing I have an open rack, let's go find somebody. What we teach our business leaders and our entrepreneurs to do is go out there and start creating a following on LinkedIn, just like marketing, right? You create a following of people that are in roles that you may be hiring for in the future. So one of the things we get with construction companies a lot is estimators. Estimators and project managers are very hard to find. So every day they send out 1 or 2 connection requests to an estimator or a project manager. They start sharing content about what it's like to work for the company. And all of a sudden this estimator, who's not even thinking about looking for work, but connected with a president of a company, because why not, start seeing these content come out about the company's culture and the way they're investing in their people and the training they're doing, where the company's going. And 6 months, 12 months, 2 years later, that estimator is finally fed up. Says, that's the company I want to go work for. So hunting is one of them. Right? We teach that kind of passive hunting.
That's a great strategy. That's a really super smart marketing strategy that fits into hiring. So I mean, that's invented here.
So hunting is one of the things that we teach. It's not the primary focus of our system. The other way is farming, where we take someone that doesn't have the skills and we coach them up. And that's what Growth CFO does, right? Like you take somebody who wants to be a CFO and you send them to the training and you invest in them. Problem with farming is it takes a long time. And you're not going to know if your crop's going to yield for 2, 3, 5 years. And then you're like, whoa, you just invest a lot of time. What we teach is a process of fishing. We want you to fish for good people. Because once you have the tools and the skills and you know where to go, you just drop a line in the water and you can have someone by the end of the day. And so that's what we teach, is that concept of fishing.
Earlier, Ryan, you mentioned that you're drafting a book. Presumably, somebody else, you've hired somebody really smart to do that for you. But I don't know, is that likely to be the case? Or are you writing it yourself?
Oh, it was a team effort. Let's say that.
A team effort. Oh, good for you. Well, good for you. I like that idea. So tell us a bit about the book then. What's it called, first off?
The book is called Hire Better People Faster.
Hire Better People Faster. Okay, well that's it's a brilliant line, by the way, and especially how you qualified better, because that's kind of that would be the area where people get hooked on, but you can delve into that and actually understand more about what you're about. So I really like that strapline. So basically, within that book, what happens?
So we walk them through our entire process, all 7 components of the CoreFit hiring system, the tools that they need to implement, how to implement them, and then how to measure the results so that you can troubleshoot, make adjustments and changes. But I think the big thing is, and people ask me, what was the hardest chapter to write? And I'll tell you, is the introduction was the hardest chapter to write, because I knew if I didn't capture somebody in the first 10 pages of the book, they weren't going to read the whole book. And what we realized real early on was it was people that are open to a new idea, a new approach to doing this. Our system's been called disruptive. It's definitely been called different. Some people have called it tough to get through because you have to do a lot of self-searching. You have to look inward and go, wait, maybe I'm the problem. A lot of our system and a lot of our process is about how can I be clearer? How can I be more transparent? How can I be more intentional about who I am as an organization and make sure that I put that out there for our people? Because that's what people want. They want intentional leaders. They don't want someone just says, oh, I filled a rec, see ya. And that's what we get a lot of times. So we walk them through how to implement the entire process. It's something that we do as part of our coaching and training program, but they got it in book form now, and they'll be able to read through that and implement the tools as they see fit.
Yeah, one of the step 5 of your process includes getting effective employee referrals. You should create a flywheel of talent by establishing an effective employee referral program that actually works. Just tell me what a flywheel is again. But it kind of it once it gets going.
This is something that Jim Collins talked about in Good to Great. It's the idea that these flywheels are heavy and they're weighted, and it takes a lot of effort to get them going. Yeah. And once you get them going, momentum keeps them going. And what happens, I think, is so often people will do an employee referral program. It'll get results for 1 or 2 weeks, and they're like, woohoo! And then they'll give up. They'll think that they've got enough momentum, and they don't. And they have to keep pushing it. But the way we do employee referral programs is quite different than what's out there. And it's one of the reasons they work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, each area, I mean, employee referrals. I mean, I worked for an American company once, and they were paying about 600 quid for somebody that you brought into the business. I mean, suppose you knew the culture. So effectively, you're bringing somebody in, 600 quid later, you got somebody fairly senior level, and I suppose it's good business. But is that the sort of thing that your clients do?
So we actually say one of the big cardinal sins of employee referral programs is paying a cash or a monetary reward. I think that's one of the worst things. Only about 6% of people are actually motivated to do that. Yeah. And when you think about what you're asking your employee to do, remember, most companies put out an employee referral program. They put a flyer on the wall, or they send an email and they say, here's what we're doing. We're going to pay you $1,000 for this. And that's it.
Yeah.
And there's no training. There's no scripting. There's nothing. Yeah. So what we do is we ask our employees, for who, by the way, are not recruiters. That's not what they do. They don't know how to have these conversations. We ask them to go out and make a phone call. And it sounds something like this. Like, I call up my buddy Scott, and I'm like, hey, Scott, I know your wife is still mad at me because, that party that we did a couple weekends ago. But hey, if you quit your job, that one that you have right now, if you quit that job and you come work for the company I work for, my boss is going to pay me $1,000. You think she'll go for it? You think she'll go for that? I mean, I know it's a little wild, but I get $1,000, and you get to quit your job and put your family's livelihood at risk. Like, that's what we're asking people to do, because they don't know how to have the conversation. They don't know how to think about it. And that's why employee referral programs, they work once or twice, because somebody always knows somebody looking for a job. Now, if Scott called me, he's like, hey, is your company hiring? Like, yeah, they are. By the way, I get $1,000 if you come work there. Easy conversation to have, right? But for me to call up that employee, that buddy of mine who's gainfully employed, and say, quit your job, come work here, I get money. Yeah. What a horrible conversation.
No, and a consultancy that I used to work for had a scheme where it was a bit more than 1,000, but it was a lot less than the recruitment fees of a new management consultant coming in from the recruitment agency. And yeah, I brought a couple of people in under that scheme, but in each case, it was as a result of people that I knew that were very definitely in the job market at the time. Yeah. One person had been made redundant, and I happened to say, hey, Ewan, come work for us. It's a great organization. They'll sort you out. Other one was, oh, Kev, I'm looking around. Heard some good things about where you're working. Long conversation. Yeah, okay, Andy, I'll introduce you.
Yeah. Yeah, you do it when it's easy.
Yeah.
But you're not going to do it when it's hard. And studies have shown worldwide, 70% of people want to switch jobs.
Oh, yeah.
70%. Yeah. But if they're not coming to me, I'm not going to call up Scott and risk my friendship and risk the fact that we don't get to party anymore or hang out or I'm not going to risk that for a couple $1,000. I'm not going to do it. Now, there is a point where you can pay enough money that I'm willing to take the risk, because the conversation goes something like this. Hey, you know how she's been wanting you to take that vacation? Well, my boss is going to give me $7,500. I'll give you half of it. Right now, it's easier conversation. But we flip that and say, okay, what is it that the candidate, the person, would want to switch to quit their job and come work here? How do we do that?
This whole idea of attracting the right people, it is a marketing campaign that you're really trying to put into play. So going back to the kind of plumbers, the electricians, the real people of the world, that without them, none of us would survive. I mean, they are really important to the world, and we all use them. I mean, I could probably wire a plug. Dad was an electrician, so I guess I'd at least be able to do that. And one or two things like that. But most of these people, they have quite a bit of learning apprenticeships to go through before, there's a fair investment. So often they start working for the people who put them through that, etc. And so they might have to work for them for a while. How do you get those people, either whether they're young or with experience, etc.? How do you create a marketing campaign for the guys who are not necessarily great at talking, not going to be running a podcast, but yeah, they'll fix your washer.
Yeah. So our focus is on frontline hourly employees. That's what our system is built for. High volume positions where you're hiring a lot of people. Maybe there's some significant turnover, and we can solve that too. And when we start looking at people in the trades, we start looking at craft workers. To your point, they don't have they're not conversationalists. They're not going to do a lot of the research. I mean, some of the people that our clients hire don't even have smartphones. No. Like they're still on a flip phone, or they share a phone with the family. Like it's that situation. So you can't rely on emails. You can't rely on all these communication methods. But what we found is there is a group of people out there that, especially when you look at the trades, that has said, I'm not going to college. I don't want to go that route. I don't want to go the professional route. I don't know what I quite want to do with my life. So I'm going to take some of these jobs just to pay the bills. And when they realize that there's a career path that within 12, 18 months, 24 months, they can be making real income, we start sharing what the opportunity looks like, the career path. This is what the training program looks like. We help a lot of clients implement and market their apprenticeship programs, whether they're accredited or not. Because if you are in one of those industries and you do not have a plan for training the next generation, you're not going to last long. It's that simple. Now, you need to hire the people that are ready to go today so you can stay in business today. And that's great for today, but you need to solve the problem that's coming in 3 years, which is those people are aging out, they're retiring, their bodies are beat up from this type of work. You need to start replacing them. So how do you start promoting these opportunities that the next generation sees? And the most important thing is to realize the kids, the high schoolers, college kids, they're not your target market. It's the people with influence over them. It's their parents.
So what was the purpose of the book then?
So I have a vision of helping entrepreneurs get what they want out of their business. You see, my dad was an owner-operator, 12-hour days, 6 days a week. And when he wasn't at work, he was spending time with the family, and that was it. And because of that, I watched what work did to him. And he had these dreams of having a big business and having lots of time and freedom and being able to do these things, but work consumed him because he never found the right people. And I run into so many entrepreneurs when I ask, why did you start your business? They're like, because I wanted to be able to travel with my kids. I'm like, well, how's that going? They're like, we're still planning the trip. Or I wanted to be able to send my kids to a private school. Well, how's that going? My kids are great at private school, but they have no relationship with me, right? And so they didn't get what they really wanted, the things that were most important. And so for me, I wanted to be able to not only make the trades cool again and to help entrepreneurs with this problem. I can't do it if it's just 1 or 2 clients at a time that I'm working with. I had to get this message out there so that these entrepreneurs that had these dreams of, I'm going to work less, I'm going to make more, I'm going to provide more for my family, can actually realize those goals. And that's why we did the book, was to make sure that they had the tools that they needed to go build an effective team so that they could get out of the day-to-day and focus on the things that were really most important to them.
One of the things I found really fascinating about you when I did a bit of digging is Fathom. Now, Kevin and I think actually I came across it first, and then Kevin, of course, latched onto it, and so he's now the expert. So basically, that's how it works in this world. But I'll find it, and then Kevin figures out how to use it, and then he'll tell me how to use it. So basically, that's
it works well.
It does work well. But actually, we love Fathom. and it works really well. But you are a kind of like a beta tester or something of that nature. You basically they like you. They don't
Yeah.
know us. We're just a user, but I mean, basically, they kind of like you're helping them. Tell us more about.
Yeah. So I'm an advisor with the Fathom team. I was one of the early testers, users, where before any of the automation was set up, they were doing everything manually behind the scene. Like I just picture they had a hamster wheel of engineers working to get back to us on stuff. And I started sharing things because I saw a lot of potential in this program, and especially working with our clients. The number one thing we encourage all of our coaches to do is when you're present with a client, be present.
Yeah.
Don't be scribbling notes. Don't be writing down ideas. Be present with the client. And so we looked for a tool that would allow us to do that. Take the notes in the background for us. Let us know what things we had to go get back to them on later. And so I just started engaging with the Fathom team and the founders over there and just said, hey, here are some ideas. Here are some ways we can make this better for the small business owner, for the entrepreneur, which is a huge target market for them.
Were they in your area, or are they in a different part of America?
No, different part. And we connected online. Like we've had a few Zoom calls and that's it.
Right.
But all of our communications asynchronous, but they've been so gracious to listen to the feedback. Like I have opinions about a lot of things. Most people don't like my opinions. They liked them. So I engaged more.
And for Graham, Fathom has become a key part of both of our workflow.
Yeah.
Very much. And I'm massive fan. I mean, I still don't understand how to use most of it. And it's a bit like, it's probably got 100 things, and I probably know how to use 7. But those 7 really do help me, to do with show notes and so forth, that type of thing. And AI, it does this wonderful thing, which they've embedded it into there, and it'll listen to this podcast, and then it'll say, well, Ryan, Kevin, and Graham, we're talking about this, and then it just helps you summarize the podcast. Now, I had back in the day, I had to do that. It's a bit of a pain, and I'm not as good at doing that as they are, or as their AIs. So, whether or not people like looking at the notes that it produces, don't know. I mean, that would be interesting, ultimately. But the fact that it can do it, and do it damn quick.
That's it. It takes writing show notes from being a 2-hour chore to being a half an hour chore.
If that, yeah.
Well, yeah. As soon as this is done, it's that within a minute you've got your Fathom recording, and it's really, really, really clever stuff. So if anybody's not come across Fathom, then you can stick it onto your desktop or onto your iPhone or smartphone, and it'll just record your Zoom conversations, and you've then got a record. I noticed some of the people I've been to clients, I've noticed some of them say, oh, do you think you could just turn it off? So I'm now gonna talk about. I'm thinking, yeah, all right, okay.
Yeah, we can. The thing is, one of the things that we teach as part of our program is when we're working with clients is we help entrepreneurs and business leaders automate the important and automate the predictable. So I know that when I meet with someone virtually, there's going to be to-dos, there's going to be takeaways, there's going to be stuff we have to go do outside. That's predictable. Yeah. And it's important that I'm able to follow up with those things. So a tool like Fathom can plug into my workflow and make those things super easy. And so we work with a lot of business leaders on how do you automate those things so that you can focus on what I call people stuff. We got computers that can take notes and summaries and all that. So let the computers do that. Let's go do people stuff. Having the face-to-face conversations, getting to know each other, going for walks in the hills to get to really connect. That's the stuff that we need to focus on as leaders. And that's a big part of our program, is helping free them up so they can focus on the people side of the business.
My wife and I have just started to watch Westworld, which everybody watched about 7 years ago. But I don't tell me anything about it, because, to be honest with you, she has to summarize it. So, she's like the Fathom in our family. But basically, I'm I'm not sure whether or not Kevin Appleby isn't actually it wasn't actually built that way. I mean, the AI thing, because you're so clever, Kevin. I don't know whether or not you're genuinely sort of an AI type Westworld chap. Are you?
The reality on that is getting frighteningly close, Graham. I was playing with a piece of AI last week called Leonardo. It's not video, but it's photographic images, and the sort of stuff you can create just by putting a couple of paragraphs of instruction in.
Yeah,
It's unbelievable.
It is. It's right. And actually, by the time we retire, Kevin, which we'll probably do more or less at the same time, it'll be infinitely more than it is now, and we're talking about a few years. And I mean, you're probably a wee bit younger, Ryan. So basically, you've probably got another, I don't know, 20 years or so, I'm guessing.
The landscape's changed so much in the last 8 months. I can't imagine what it's going to do in the next 8 years.
What can you? I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, your business is bound to change simply through the AI impact. Are you thinking of in your own process that there are certain things that, I mean, Fathom's one thing, but it's a sort of a brought in AI. But
yeah,
have you started to think about the
so we just ran into, I just met with somebody this week about this, about creating some internal AI tools for us. So the number one challenge that our clients have, being that this is a marketing process, is content ideation. It's coming up with the ideas for the marketing materials and the messages and those sorts of things. And that's something that my team and I are experts at, but it's work. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, I just have ideas just spewing out. And what I've seen is AI, if you can get the prompts correct, the ideas that it can come up with that you can then use to seed the rest of your marketing materials is incredible. So we're looking at that as both an internal and an external tool for our clients to help them with that content ideation following our proven process. So when we talk about writing a new job ad, we're going to teach these AI bots how to write the job ad the way we would write it.
Right.
And then clients can sit down and say, hey, I got this new idea for a job, or I need something new. And they'll be able to get the summary or the snippets or whatever they need. And then at that point, you just take and you apply the human element to it, and it's ready to go.
I'm going to have to listen back to your conversation with Ryan, Kevin, because I'm sure you've probably covered an awful lot more than we have. But it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Ryan. You actually unlock companies' hiring potential. I love all these. It's probably all the AI headlines that you've got from.
No, that was the hard work stuff that I was talking about.
Yeah, I actually, there are all kinds of people. I've got all kinds of people's books here, and we've had various copywriters on the show over the years. But AI is brilliant at coming up with headlines.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the style of Dan Kennedy. Brilliant. Yeah, got something that's pretty good. So, or Gary Halbert or somebody, I mean, at the end of the day, it's really amazing stuff. But anyway, on that note, Ryan Englin kind of thing. I don't know if I got the name wrong again, but
perfect.
Thank you very much indeed for coming on the Next 100 Days podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Marketing takes over what's traditionally an HR process, and wow, it doesn't seem to make a difference.
It does, doesn't it? I mean, when you think about it, everything that Ryan's gone through, attracting the right people, better people, and doing it in a fast way for people who find recruiting difficult, not natural, then if they can make better decisions for their clients, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I really like that Ryan's just taking the process and putting it in a book.
Yeah.
Hire Better People Faster, published on October 17.
Well, this is just about at the same time we'll be bringing this podcast out. So, at the end of the day, look it up, because, I know he's based in Tennessee, but, if you're in the UK listening to this, then there's a heck of a lot of learning that you can take, not just from this conversation, but from clearly from the book. He will explain, bit by bit, the things that you've got to be considering and I'll guarantee you they'll be different from what you're doing.
Yeah. And Ryan is a really, really bright individual, knows a lot of stuff. And Ryan's a fellow podcaster. You mentioned that analogy about hunting, farming, or fishing in terms of the way you recruit. Well, Ryan's got a podcast. It's called Talent Tacklebox.
Yeah, I mean,
really say if you want to find out much, much more about people, teams, recruiting them, retaining them, managing them, and hear some views from some really interesting guests like me, who recorded a podcast with Ryan for Talent Tacklebox earlier this week, go listen to it.
I just love the fact that you get onto all of these American podcasts, Kevin. I mean, you must be on some sort of list somewhere.
I wish.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm sure it'll be a great listen. And today it's been my privilege to join you, Kevin, interviewing Ryan Englin. And well, I guess I've been Graham Arrowsmith.
I've been Kevin Appleby. Goodbye.
Goodbye.